Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. Tonight we got a great show for you with my co-host, David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers. Thank you for coming.
As always, we want to thank you for coming, and we greet you with the love and the honor of the infinite creator. And we continue every day to pray that you will understand the universe a little better each day. And thanks for hanging out with us.
Yes, absolutely. Elderberry's in the house. He's on the back deck over my pond. The frogs are deafening. Heard a cow low in the distance. How nice is that? Look, Chloe's in the house. There you go. What's up? What happened? Big old Al, Big Al. I haven't seen Big Al in a while. I know he's out there.
What's up?
He had some shoulder surgery. But tonight we're going to be talking about the genocide of the American Indians. Why? And I got some good things. I got this new old book, Indian Horror, Indian Horror or Massacres by the Red Men. And there was something in here I was reading the other day, and I want to read it for all of you if I can find it here in a minute. And it was about this. It was about Captain Pike. And I don't know if you ever heard of Captain Pike. Nobody has. It's in this old book. It talks about a lot of people, and Captain Pike is one of them. And I've been reading about Daniel Boone. Oh boy, there's a whole bunch of stuff on him. But
good or bad?
Huh?
Good or bad?
Good stuff.
Oh, good.
You know, Daniel Boone was quite the guy. Anyway, I'm trying to find the Captain Pike story here, and he has something interesting to say. I'm not going to read his whole story, but he has a speech in here that he gives, and let's start first. Captain John Logan. Oh, there's a lot of Indians in here and stuff that I've never heard of, which I thought was really crazy. Like I read about Pontiac, and we all have heard about Pontiac, but then it gets into some Indians, the tribes I've never heard of either. And as soon as I can find it, Battle of Bloody Bridge. I just read it the other day too. I thought I had it marked. Oh, the Christian Indians. Here we go. It's all about diabolical deeds. And it says it's not necessary details of these events, the Indian colonial wars, blah, blah, blah. This was a tribe that was located in northwest of far east in the Pennsylvania and Ohio area. In the year 1782 was committed the diabolical murder of the inoffensive Christian Indians of Gardahoot. That's how it's spelled. Gnadenhuetten. I've never heard of that tribe before. The Ganahoot. I guess that's how it would be said. They were by Salem and Scobern in Ohio. In February, a part of Sandusky Indians had massacred a family consisting of a man, his wife, and 5 or 6 children. The settlers on the Pennsylvania frontier concluded that either the Moravian Indians at Nagahoot were the guilty parties. Have you ever heard of the Moravian? Moravian. That's how it is. Moravian, I would say. Moravian. Never heard of that group either. Well, anyway, according to, they organized themselves in a band of 80 or 90 men, mounted and blah, 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 you know, and they did their thing, and they caught these Indians. Then they caught the Indians. They carried them off Detroit, notorious Captain Pike, an Indian by command of the governor at that fort. However, since it was found impossible to prove any wrongdoing against them, they had been released and were now, 6th of March, out in the fields gathering in the Indian court, which they had left in the fields the autumn previous when they were taken away. Now, here's the funny part. These Indians were the Christian Indians. These were the good Indians. They weren't fighting anybody, right? They were blamed for killing these, they were. It should be here mentioned that the praying Indians, as they were called, had um, narrowly escaped destruction earlier, but now they got Captain Pike to deal with. Okay, the buildings turned to slaughterhouses. That's the title of this paragraph there, chapter here. The white guerrillas informed, meaning the white guerrillas, meaning the white men, informed them that it was their purpose to remove them to Fort Pitt for safety. Much pleased, they were much pleased. They at once laid down their arms. Those at Salem were then summoned, and all were placed in guardhouses. Colonel Williamson, then drawing up his men in a line, put the question whether the Indians should be taken prisoners to Fort Pitt or put to death, requesting those who favored the former movement to step forward and form a new line. You know that scenario where everybody stands in line, take 1 foot forward if you want to be part of this. Only 16 or 18 men were said to have advanced. The savages, in the meantime, having a present understanding of their fate, were praying, singing hymns, and exhorting one another to remain firm. In a short time, the buildings were converted into slaughterhouses. Apparently, they decided that they weren't going to take the Indians to Fort Pitt, they were just going to kill them. See, this is the genocide of the Indians. This is the way the mentality, these people didn't do anything. They caught a bunch of Indians who were picking their corn, basically, and said, think you're a guilty party for doing whatever, and we're going to lock you up. Okay, filled with in a short time, the two buildings were converted into slaughterhouses filled with the mangled and bleeding bodies of the innocent people, gray-haired men, women, and tender children. None were spared the fatal wounds of the tomahawk, club, spear, and scalping knife. I said none, but 2 young lads did indeed escape. One by pretending to be dead, and the other by creeping unobserved into a cellar, whence he emerged in the night and fled into the woods. So they killed the whole Indian tribe. Literally took them all out. Okay, now here's the thrilling speech given. This is a speech preserved by Heckwelder of the noted Captain Pike above mentioned, which is so remarkable a piece of oratory that it deserves to be given entire. So this is going to give you the reason, and I found it kind of scary,
disturbing,
and disturbing. Yes, disturbing, but scary all in the same. So if you have an aversion to this, just close your ears. Okay. Let's see. So, having made an expedition against the Americans in the Revolutionary War, he had come before the English commandant of the fort at Detroit to make a reporting of his undertaking. He was seated in front of his Indians and held his hand as a stick to which a scalp was fastened. So he's got this stick with a scalp.
Robert?
Yes.
Don't speak too fast.
Oh, okay. I'll go slower. He was seated in front of the Indians and held his hand a stick to which a scalp was fastened. After the usual pause, he arose and spoke as follows: Father. Then he stooped a little, turned towards his audience with a countenance expressing sarcasm, said in a low tone of voice, "I have said, Father, though indeed I do not know why I am to call him so, having never known any other father than the French, and considering the English only as brothers. But as this name is so imposed upon us, I shall make use of it and say," at the same time fixing his gaze upon the commander, "Father, some time ago you put a war hatchet into my hand, saying, 'Take this weapon and try it on the heads of my enemies, the long knives, and let me afterwards know of it was sharp and good.' Father, at the time when you gave me this weapon, I had neither cause nor inclination to go to war against a people who had done me no injury. Yet, in obedience to you, who say you are my father, and call me your child, I received the hatchet, well knowing that if I did not obey you, you would withhold me or from me the necessary necessities of life. Father, I have said that you may perhaps think me a fool for thus thoughtlessly rushing on your enemy. You do not believe this, Father. Think not that I want sense to perceive that although you now pretend to keep up a perpetual enmity to the long knives, you may before long conclude a peace with them. Father, you say you love your children. In the Indians, this you have often told me, and indeed it is to your interest to say so, and say so to them, that you may have them at your service. But Father, who of us can believe that you can love a people of a different color from your own better than those who have a white skin like yourselves? Father, pay attention to what I am going to say. While you, Father, are setting me on your enemy, much in the same manner as a hunter sets his dog on the game, while I am in the act of rushing on the enemy of yours with the bloody, destructive weapons you gave me, I may perchance happen to look back to a place whence you started me, and what shall I see? Perhaps I may see my father shaking hands with the long knives. Yes, with these people he now calls his enemies. I may then see him laugh at my folly for obeying orders, and yet I am now, uh, risking my life at his command. Father, keep what I have said in remembrance. Now, Father, there is what has been done with your hatchet you gave me. With these words, he handed to the commandant the stick with the scalp upon it. I have done with the hatchet what you have ordered me to do, and found it sharp. Nevertheless, I did not do all of that I might have done. No, I did not. My heart failed within me. I felt compassion for your enemy. Innocence had no part in your quarrels. Therefore, I distinguished, I spared, I took some live flesh, which while I was bringing to you, I spied one of your large canoes, in which I put it for you. In a few days, you will recover this flesh and find that the skin is of the same color of your own. Father, I hope you will not destroy what I have saved. You, Father, have the means of preserving that which with me would perish for want. The warrior is poor and his cabin is always empty, but your house, Father, is always full. Nothing could better distinguish the difference between a savage and a civilized race than the last 2 or 3 sentences of the speech of Captain Pike. So, what did you get out of that? He's looking back and he's saying, You set me up. You told me to go out and kill your enemies while you're shaking hands with them at the same time. I mean, they took this guy, raised him up, and then turned him into a fighting machine just to go out and kill those people who did him no injury, no harm. This is what I was talking about, you know, the getting rid of the Indians. They were exterminating, and you got somebody manipulate. Even back then, they were just manipulating everybody. You know what I'm saying?
Was it towards the end of that he said something faint of heart?
Yeah, my heart failed within me. I felt compassion for your enemy.
So
Innocent
does
was.
that mean that after killing a bunch of them, he was like, I really don't like this? Is that what you take on that?
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like he.
Faint. Did it, read that again, please? Faint of heart.
Yeah, I've done with your hatchet what you have ordered me to do, and found it sharp. Nevertheless, I did not do all of that I might have done. So means he could
Okay,
have even done
so
more.
that could mean that he could have attacked more Indians and scalped more. And
Yep.
so, okay, keep going, please.
Yes. And then my heart failed within me. I felt compassion for your enemy. Innocence had no part in your quarrels. Therefore, I disguised, I spared, I took some live flesh, which I was bringing to you. I spied one of your large canoes, in which I put it for you. So apparently, he he spared some guys, and he he killed some white guys to spare the other guys, and then he put them in the large canoes. And he says, in a few
And he
days,
what?
you will. Apparently, he must have killed some white guys. And then he
Oh,
says, in a few days you will recover this flesh and find that the skin is of the same color with your own. And I hope you. And then he says, Father, I hope you will not destroy what I have saved. You, Father, have the means of preserving that which with me would perish for want. You know.
well, he was
And
worried that they were going to take away his provisions and demote him. And because early on, he's in stating, you are the father and you're the one that I get all my stuff from. So at the
yeah,
end of it, by not completing his mission, if that's what they deemed, he was worried about being decommissioned himself.
yeah. Well, he was just a pawn in this whole thing. He
Right.
realizes that now. He realizes that, hey, you know, you're you're white. I'm not. And you gave me a hatchet, told me to go out, kill Indians and scalp them and do all those dirty deeds, and I did that. And then now all of a sudden I developed a conscience, and I realized that when I look back, you're shaking hands with them back there while you're telling me to go up here and killing people that have never done me any injury.
Right.
Now he's literally saying he's confused, and I think I understand, because of the fact that that's what they were doing back in the day. The genocide was, they were pitting tribe against tribe.
Yep.
And here, I'll give you some guns, I'll give you some food and medicine and blah blah blah, and then you go out and kill your enemies. Yeah, that sounds great. And then all of a sudden, you're going out and doing these things, and you're thinking, wait a minute, this guy was waking up. He was realizing that he's killing his own kind. And then he must have saved some people, and maybe even killed a white guy to do it. And he's like, hey, you'll see some guy dead in the boat out there, and don't get mad at me.
Yep.
So he's having a conscience, but it just tells you that, like, the slaughterhouse part, they're let's see, you got 20 guys here, who thinks we should take them all the way to the fort, and who thinks we should just kill them here? Yeah, you see what I mean? That ain't even logical. It's like, really, you're just go killing them all. I mean, I don't get it. It just makes me think, wow, you know, what's going through these people's heads? Do they not realize? I guess, are we more civilized nowadays that we realize that people are people? You know, we just had this discussion the other day about humans being human, not white or black or whatever like that, right?
Yeah, well, I'm sitting here as I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking, let's go back to the Vietnam War, where soldiers were sent over into the jungle and told this is the enemy and these are the people, and that the Viet Cong are your enemy. When as many folks have looked back on it, it's like that was just stupid.
Yeah.
That they were people too. So, even in this day and age, I'll say, versus back then with the Indian, mankind has been against each other like that. And then all of a sudden, the soldiers grow a conscience and say, no, no more. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
The big man upstairs tells me to do this, but, wait a minute. I got a conscience.
Yes. Okay. So, okay, here. Back to the thing. Okay, yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next part that I got for us tonight. You like this finger. This is so good. Anyway, well, we got this year's talking about how many Indians died and what happened. It's the genocide of the Native Americans. Let's skip over this. 19th and 20th century is subject to efforts to eradicate the American culture, or Native American culture, from the face of the earth, basically. Um, let's see, captured some essential elements that have the patterns of information. Okay. According to Ward Churchill, a professor of ethnic studies in the University of Colorado, the reduction of the North American Indian population from an estimated 12 million in 1500 to barely 237,000 in 1900 represents a vast genocide, the most sustained on record. By the end of the 19th century, writes David Standard, a historian at the University of Hawaii, Native Americans had undergone the worst human holocaust in the world has ever witnessed, roaring across two continents non-stop for 4 centuries and consuming the lives of countless tens of millions of people. In the judgment of Lenore Stifferman and Philip Lane Jr., there can be no more monumental example of sustained genocide. Certainly none involved a race of people as broad and complex as this anywhere in the annals of human history. Wow. The sweeping charge of genocide against the Indians became especially popular during the Vietnam War, when historians opposed to the conflict began drawing parallels between our actions in Southeast Asia and early examples of supposedly integrating American viciousness towards non-white people. Wow. The historian Richard Duran refers to the troops under the command of the Indian scout Kit Carson, called them forerunners of the burning 5th Marines, who set fire.
Forerunners of what?
Forerunners of the burning 5th Marines, who set fires to Vietnamese villages, while the American Indian, the first victim, in 1972, J. David urged contemporary readers to recall how Americans' civilization orientated on theft and murder and efforts toward genocide. Yeah, so, I mean, still, the thing is, it went, it was happening, and right in front of everybody, and everybody was okay with it. That's the bad part. That's what I was trying to say. It's like, wow, you didn't notice that, like 11 million people had just been disappeared.
Can I want to
Yeah,
use the word, it was a sustainable genocide. In
yeah,
other words, for 4 centuries, they killed a bunch of them off and then a bunch of them came back. then they killed a bunch more, and then they came back. So I say sustainable in that they there were more children born over those centuries, so they just kept killing them off. So the more that they made, they killed them off again. They made some more, they killed them off again, and like wow, holy crap. Now, to the point of the Jews and everybody during World War II, that was within a 10 or 15-year period.
Yeah.
And that was bad enough in and of itself. I am not degrading that. But to think that over 4 centuries,
Yeah.
the Native American were persecuted, burned out, tomahawked, and then shot when they got guns. So, and that more Native Americans were massacred over those centuries. And one might say, well, that's not really a big deal. It was the Indian Wars. And well, but it was still a genocide.
Yes.
One way or the other, how many did they start out with? 30 million or something like that?
12 million. 12 million people in the 1500s. And by the 19th century, 400 years later, they were down to 230 some thousand.
I would debate that 12 million over the expanse of the United States and down into Mexico. I would debate that 12.
Well,
I would bet you that's an estimate, I know, but I'm saying I bet you there were more people.
yeah. Oh, maybe. Yeah. I mean, they're guessing anyway. I mean, just guessing because nobody was here to count these people.
Right.
But
and the density of the population and etc. But I would just say I would bet you there was more than 12 million people.
Yeah,
at least 15 across the United States. I mean, even up and down the with the Cherokee and all, there were a lot of people on the east of the Mississippi.
Yes, and I totally agree with that. Now, here's a point that we're going to see, and this is about Native American disease and epidemics. And we're thinking, we're thinking too, and I don't want to go there. We're like, oh yeah, we went out, these people, we just, hacked them all up. A lot of these people died of diseases before we even got them. It's really devastating. So it talks here on the diseases, and it says in Eurasia, people travel thousands of miles and invading populations, spreading infectious diseases throughout the continent, as did trade, including the Silk Road. I'm sure you've heard of the Silk Road. For more than 1,000 years, travels brought goods, infectious diseases from the east, where some of the later had jumped from animals to humans as a result of chronic exposure. Many infections became epidemic within the societies over time, and surviving Europeans gradually developed acquired immunity. And also they were still subject to pandemics and epidemics. Europeans carried such epidemic diseases when they migrated and explored the New World. But what happened? It says here that the arrival of the settlement of the Europeans in the Americas resulted in what is known as the Columbian Exchange. During this period, the European settlers brought many different technologies, animals, plants, lifestyles with them, some of which benefited. The Europeans also took plants and goods back to the old world. Okay, we know that. But Europeans also brought new infectious diseases, including smallpox, bubonic plague, chickenpox, cholera, and common cold, diphtheria, influenza, malaria, measles, scarlet fever, sexually transmitted diseases, and syphilis, typhoid, whatever that is, and tuberculosis. And
sounds like they brought almost every known disease, known to man over.
Exactly.
It'd be easier to say what they didn't bring.
Pretty much.
That's a sad way to put it, but
oh, I know. And then each of these resulted in sweeping epidemics among the Native Americans who had disability, illness, and high mortality rate. Europeans infected with such diseases typically carried them in dormant state, which actively infected but asymptomatic, or only had mild symptoms because Europeans had been subject for centuries to a selective process by these diseases. The explorers, the colonists, often unknowingly passed the diseases to natives and so forth. And it goes on.
Can I note something?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, with all these diseases, and to the native population, we can obviously, some of these things were devastating. But could you imagine that on Monday morning, everybody in the tribe was pretty much okay? One or two people were feeling a little sickly. And by Saturday afternoon, most of the tribe was dead.
Yeah. Yeah, ain't that
I
crazy?
mean, that's how quick some of that stuff happened. Within 2 weeks, there might be 5 people left alive. I mean, that's how serious it was. So when we say it devastated a tribe or a population, we mean it killed 90% of them outright.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so it just imagine, I mean, that there's all this. I mean, I cannot imagine it. You know, there's 100 people in a tribe, and there's 10 people left at the end of the week.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And here's the numbers on this. A
And
specific.
and and it
Yeah.
wasn't a war. It was
Yes.
it wasn't, it wasn't like somebody came in on horseback and slaughtered the tribe. No, it was everybody got sick and they were dead. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, that's what I'm trying to. So I mean, I explained one in here why they were killing each other, in a way, and now I'm going to explain. I want to make sure that people understand that the Indians didn't all get killed off from men killing men. There was a bigger number of. I mean, there was a bigger plot to this whole thing. And it wasn't people; it was people spreading a disease and getting killed off. So, a specific example of what followed. Cortez invaded invasion of Mexico. Before his arrival, the Mexican population is estimated to have been around 25 to 30 million. 50 years later, the Mexican population was reduced to 3 million, mainly by infectious disease. Um, a 2018 study by Koch, Burney, Maslin, and Lewis concluded that an estimated 55 million indigenous people died following the European conquest of the American, beginning in 1492. Estimates of the entire number of human lives lost during the Cozil epidemic in New Spain have ranged from 5 to 15 million people, making it one of the most deadly disease outbreaks of all time. By 1700, fewer than 5,000 Native Americans remained in the southeastern coastal region of the United States. In Florida alone, an estimated 700,000 Native Americans lived there in 1520. But by 1700, the number was around 2,000. That is a huge drop. And like I said, it wasn't the 100 colonists that came there, or Cortez and his 200 guys, or 1,000 guys he had. They didn't go out there and kill off millions of people. They came and brought some diseases with them, and then they left. Cortez died, and when they came back later on, all the people were dead. Little did he know that he brought some infectious disease that they didn't know anything about. Inadvertently, he killed them off. See what I'm saying? And like I said, 700,000 people in Florida, and by 1700, which nothing's going on in 1700 yet. The number was 2,000 people in Florida. That's
Here,
that's nothing Florida's huge.
Yep. Here's one of the things that I just scratched my head off. How do they know?
Well, I
How
know
do
we
they
talked.
know about some of these numbers? I mean, I'm just what you know, having lived in. Well, I grew up in Florida, and I can't say I lived there most of my life anymore. But having grown up in Florida and traveled all around it, you know, it's like how can you make that statement? Where is your information? You know, oh, there's only 12,000 versus 700,000. Well, I would question, you know, are you sure there were 700,000? But Georgia, I mean, I'm sorry, Florida is a big state, you know, and there's a lot of swamp and there's a lot of coastline. And I just can't believe that there was only 12,000 people left. I just, that just sounds weird to
2,000.
me.
2,000.
2,000? Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's see, I would believe 12,000 more than 2,000. It's a
Well,
big state.
that's what I'm saying is, well, we know when Cortez or whoever, Ponce de Leon or whoever the guy, remember we were reading about him, and he was making his march through Florida looking for that gold, you know, the
Yep.
lost treasure gold, and he would go from village to village, plundering and killing, and you know, and they were talking about the thousands of Indians that they see, thousands of them, you know, big cities and so forth and so on. And I can imagine that. But as it went on, because see, they called these guys liars later on. What
They
happened
what?
was they called them liars because of the
Liars.
fact, yeah, they were lying. They said, well, because what happened was is these guys went through, he went looking for his lost city of gold and, you know, things like that, conquering these Indians, you know, marching through and so forth and so on. He wrote all of this information down and described all the stuff, and then nobody came for 20 years. And when they came back 20 years later, there was none of the cities. There was none of the Indians. Everything was gone. The trees were grown up. The cities were gone. There was only some small tribes that were living in some grass huts, and they went, where is all the stuff he described? Where are all these giant tribes and, you know, massive chiefs that you see what I'm saying? Because, well, they all died. I mean, if you like you were saying, you know, you wake up today and somebody's sick, and by the end of the day, half your tribe is dead, and in 2 weeks, there's only 2 or 3 of you left. How do you carry on? You know, I mean, what do you do? You and 3 others are the only ones left in your tribe, and one's a little girl, and one's a old man, and you're some, you know, 20-year-old boy.
Yeah, how do you repopulate?
Yeah, what do you do? You know, I mean, you can't build a castle. You're gonna just wander around the woods and live in a little hut. You're gonna, you know, you can't repopulate. You got a little kid and an old man, you know, and you're the young boy, and there's nobody around for miles and miles. You go to the next village, everybody's dead. Maybe you find somebody else, and then 20 years later, and it was like here. I mean, you're in Georgia, right? So you got things grow fast there. If you know, if you clear your woods out, how long before that woods grows up into thick, you know,
Oh, it
overgrowth?
comes up quick. Couple of
That's,
years time.
yeah, and I'm sure you've seen houses out there. I've seen houses different places before, especially when I lived in
That
Wisconsin.
get growed up over, you know, oh yeah, there's several of them around here just in my neighborhood. Old you know, old log homes that are covered up, and yeah.
Yeah, you know, people move out, and within 5 or 10 years, that house is falling apart. The trees have grown up. You know, things are just breaking down. In 20 years, that house is pretty much unlivable anymore. It's pretty much ready to be torn down,
Yep.
right? Yeah, and I can imagine. You know, most of the Indians they had, you know, they had primitive buildings. They lived in, well, we talked about the huts and the long houses and stuff. Well, how long do you think a longhouse will survive?
Not long.
Yeah, not long. And then the trees grow up, and you're like, you wouldn't even know that they were there. Especially if a fire went through or something. Poof, gone. Done. Anyway.
Imagine if the cities were still vibrant.
Yes. Yes.
And
Exactly.
had those cities continued to, well, not necessarily expand, but been sustainable. And then come the 17 and 1800s, the Indian wars might have been different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they would have came in and they didn't have to repopulate from square one, uh, you know, that's a big defeat for technology, even in their part. I mean, think of all the traditions that were lost, the languages that were lost. We're going to get into that in a second here, but I'm going to present here this part. And now we're going to take a look at from the Indians' point of view. Okay? And this here is the Great Fear of 1776. And I'm going to read you this first paragraph here. And it's talking about the Shawnee people. And the Cherokees stuff. Okay, sometime in the mid-1776, just as colonists were declaring their independence from Great Britain, an unnamed Shawnee addressed an assembly of representatives from multiple indigenous nations who were gathered at the Cherokee capital of Chakotah. Taking a wampum belt in hand, the Shawnee spoke of a long history of injustice at the hands of the Virginians, a term many native people applied to greedy settlers from Virginia and other colonies. The red people, he said, had once been masters of the whole country, but now they hardly possessed ground enough to stand on. Not only did the Virginians want their land, the Shawnee contended they wanted their lives. It is plain, he said, that there was an intention to expirate them. Although the term genocide had not been invented, this is precisely what the Shawnee feared. Native people were up against a project that threatened their very existence. And so, like I said, I think at that point they knew that, hey, they're out to get us.
The gig was up.
Yeah, exactly.
So
They're
take that into consideration, his statement. And so the Indian wars got worse. So the native people were literally scared for their lives because they knew the white man was out to get them.
Yeah.
I mean, so, somebody could say, well, them savages, but the savages were well aware of what the white man's base, that the white man was out to get rid of them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and you could look at this picture here. You got women and children, and you got a soldier with a hammer, and he's just knocking them all in the head. And I mean, can you imagine that? Hey, you guys, you're all here. Well, we're just gonna put you all to death. I'm gonna come around with a big hammer and knock you in the head dead. I mean, look at, they're praying. They're like, they don't look violent. They're just women and children. I mean, oh my gosh.
Yep.
Whose troops in Indian towns, they killed several hundred defenders, inhabitants, and raped women and children. Losing or direct killing. The abuse of captured women would have been much higher if not native people abandoned their towns. Of course, they're going to abandon their towns, leaving the graves of their ancestors to be robbed, their houses and crops to be torched. Okay, and from 1776 to 1783, the U.S. troops destroyed over 70 Cherokee towns, 50 Haudenosaunee towns, and at least 10 multi-ethnic towns in the Ohio Valley. The cost of this destruction was high, subjecting people to starvation, disease, in some cases, causing leaders to relocate to new places. But for many communities, the strategy of abandoning towns seemed the only way to avoid being slaughtered. Oh, and here you're going to read from the Seneca. As Seneca chief Saiwag Jernagaha, Old Smoke, later said, I'm sure I mispronounced it, Sagen, I ain't going to try. We lost our country, it is true, but this was to secure our women and children. The Nazis and other nations had not been completely annihilated, but from their perspective, this was not because the United States and its people did not intend to exterminate them. Instead, their own agency had prevented an even worse catastrophe. So there you go. It's just crazy how that, I mean, people don't realize,
And the thing is that the white man called the Indian savages when there was much savagery from the white man himself. So
yes,
this I guess you could say maybe it's a double standard or whatever, but oh no, the Indians are the savages when they're knocking the women and children in the head with a hammer. No, we're not savages. We're doing, then we're doing this because we're Christians and they're the savages. We got to get rid of them savages like a rabid dog.
yeah, I know. I mean, I just think about that, and it's like, what happens when some other group of people come in and we become savages? Anyway, okay, I'm going to move on. This is my last slide. Okay, now remember, we talked about Powhatan, right? This was way back when. And we're going to talk about the Pamucky tribe. Pamucky, I guess that's how you say it. Pamucky Indians. They're pretty much wiped out now. There's no Indians left in that tribe. They live down in your area there. Crystal Shaman says, what book was that? This book is called the Pamucky Indians book. Okay, the leading tribe of the Powhatan Confederacy was that from which Pamucky River in eastern Virginia takes its name. Strongest in numbers, this tribe also proved strongest in vitality. A few turtling remnants and a few uncertain and feeble strains of blood only remain of the other tribes. But the Pamucky Indians, abet with modified manners, impoverished blood, and much dim prestige, are still represented on the original hunting ground by a lineal remnant of the original tribe. The language of Powhatan and his contemporaries is lost among their descendants. The broad realm of early days is reduced to a few parley acres. The very existence of the tribe is hardly known. Throughout the state and country, yet in some degree, the old pride of blood and savage aristocracy persists, and it is undoubtedly to these characteristics that the present existence of the Pamucky tribe is to be ascribed. By reason of the prominent and typical place of the Powhatan Confederacy in history and literature, it seems especially desirable to ascertain and record the characteristics, physical, psychological, and social of the surviving remnants of this race. It was with this view that John Garland Pollard of Richmond, a former attaché of the Smithsonian Institute, was encouraged to make an investigation recorded in the following pages. And it is for this reason the record is offered to the public. Okay, yeah, and then it goes on. This is out of the Pamucky Indians of Virginia. So, but anyway, I just thought that was interesting because it's saying that, hey, the whole, the remnants of this tribe are just, and here's some pictures of Monkey Indians. It's in their reservation is now in the middle of Pennsylvania, and you can see some of them. It's another picture. Old pictures. Said most of these people have been, civilized long time now. Monkey Indians making pottery.
They became part of the Appalachian peoples.
Yes, they did. So like I said, they integrated long ago because they're literally, once Powhatan was gone, he was a powerful chief. They remember Powhatan was Pocahontas's father, so that's where we get him. Remember we did Pocahontas, and here's John Smith, and Pocahontas is saving him, and we know the whole story really now. But in the big part of it, this is the tribe that we're talking about. But it's long since pretty much gone, just remnants of it. And I'm sure there's still people left, but it's one of the few tribes that actually survived. The rest of there was other tribes around that area that are totally gone.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And Pocahontas tribe struggling to survive as it seeks official recognition of the Native American heritage. Anyway, yeah. So, like I said, these, the Native American tribes got wiped out. The ones that did survive are far and few between. I can't imagine how many different tribes there was and how many languages have been lost since the turn of the century, or back then, probably from the 1700s on. If they weren't killed off with some disease, like all the ones I named there, from everything from smallpox to measles to anything you can imagine, pretty much.
Yep.
If they weren't killed off that way, then the few that were left, like I said, they were killed off by, hey, you want to sell your land? Here, we're going to take your land, and eventually we're going to give you a little bit.
Well, 1776, and then by 18. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. The 1776, but then 1880, 1830s, whatever it was, when they did the Trail of Tears. So within less than 100 years, they literally rounded them up and
well,
said, you're
and the
out of
thing
here.
Was, in some way, I can see why they did, because they're probably thinking, well, there's only a few of them now. There used to, when we first got here, there was 1 million of them, and it's kind of like the buffalo. There's 40 million buffalo, and then at the end there, they said, wait a minute, we got to stop shooting them. There's only 300 left, and whoops, we almost killed them all. Can you imagine big buffalo all going extinct because that guy just wanted to go for one last buffalo hunt, even though there's only one buffalo left.
Yeah, well, in 1814, they took a little trip along down the Mississippi. The Indians helped them, fend off the British. But then when Andrew Jackson became president, there was a couple of items that ticked him off. And he said, screw the Native Americans, let's get rid of them.
Remember, I read that passage out of that book, and it was all political. They wanted the land. They didn't want the slaves to cross over into Florida. And Jackson campaigned because on the thing that he would get the Indians out of there. And people voted for him, so he did. He was a big Indian fighter. And the other guys, remember, he was running against some other guy who said, no, we got to leave them be. And he didn't get elected.
Yep. So thinking about that, then that was the general consensus of the white people at that time. Let's get rid of the Indian.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, since they voted him in, obviously that's what the majority was like,
Yeah. Like I said, if they voted, well, it's like any president. The president gets voted in, and he promised to do certain things, and there's certain things that whoever's backing him will let him do, and other things they just won't. Like, well, it's like Trump when he got elected. He said he was going to put Hillary in jail. He never did. He never even started to. But he said he was going to, sign some trade agreements, and we were going to have a free-for-all in oil, and the oil business went booming. So, he keeps one promise, but he doesn't keep some other ones. And just like Biden, he says he was gonna do the oil. He was gonna get rid of the oil, and we're gonna go all electric. Well, he did that on day one, closing the pipelines. Now we're going all electric. We can do it or not. We're gonna go, like it or not.
Yep, like it or not.
But anyhow, okay, I got my stuff done. I hope everybody learned something. It was kind of one of those things that was burning in my mind and in my heart that I needed to talk about, because every time I read these stories, especially this one book here, it's always about even Daniel Boone. I'm reading that story, and it's like three Indians showed up, and and they tried to kidnap him, and he killed two of them. And I'm thinking, every time you turn around, 3 Indians get killed and 1 white man gets killed, or 10 Indians get slaughtered out there, and 2 white men get killed, and it goes on and on and on. And you know what I mean? So it's like, really, they're not producing, like you said, they're producing and then they're getting wiped out. They're producing, get built up, and then they get wiped out. And the white man didn't have to worry about that. Even though they were getting wiped out, there was new white men coming in from Europe all the time.
Yep.
Constantly.
Plus the population increase that was already here, from I would say by that time, the indigenous white settlers that had been here at least one generation, so,
yes.
The children are having children. And yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, as the population, when you got better facilities and things are going better, your population's gonna increase, and the colonists that were coming in, they had the better amenities, whereas the natives, they were getting pushed back. They were fighting amongst themselves. They were fighting the white man. They were fighting diseases. And that's what I was trying to get to tonight about all of this, because they weren't just fighting people. They were fighting other tribes. They were, one tribe gets pushed west. Now he's on that guy's land. Like we were just reading about the ones going getting kicked out of Virginia, and they're moving west because we don't have any land left here. And
remember that they brought blankets in that were diseased and handed them out to the Native Americans. That was the other thing, and they did that on purpose.
Yes. Oh, in that book, I forget which book it was. It was one of the history books. It said right in there, they gave them blankets and stuff, hoping that they would, they were intentionally giving the blankets with smallpox to the Indians. Is that right in the history book? Like, what the heck? Now, true or not? Now, I don't know on a, how should I say it, a chemical or, doctoring level. Now, I've heard people talk about it saying, the virus of smallpox exposed to the air for a certain length of time just dies off. It needs a host to be transmitted. But then again, like it said in that one article in Wikipedia that, well, you or me, could have been a trapper or somebody going from tribe to tribe. He's transmitting the disease, even though he's not showing any signs of the disease, because he's immune to it. It's dormant in him, but he's infecting everybody around him, like typhoid Mary.
Yep, he's a carrier.
Yes, and you only need one of those. And the thing is it infected people. You got one guy who's sick, and the you know, what you call it, the medicine man comes and tries to heal him, and the next thing you know, he's going around from tent to tent to tent, you know, trying to heal everybody. He's just spreading the disease from one, and then he gets sick, and then they're all die. Like you said, it was spreading so fast that, you know, in the beginning of the week, a couple of people get sick, and by the end of maybe even by the end of the day, everybody's half dead. What do? You know, I mean,
And before you know it, it's too late to quarantine.
yes, and the Indians didn't
It's
understand.
just well, they did because these people are sick. Don't go over there. But
Well, yeah,
so many people got sick so quickly, they couldn't say don't go over there because then all the tents were sick.
well, the thing is too is, remember, these people lived in like long houses where, you
Right.
know, multiple families, multiple generations. Now, here's another thing I was thinking about
And if
is,
they didn't sleep together, they came in and ate meals together. And
yes,
then they'd go back to their respective teepees to sleep or whatever. But to the longhouse thing, yeah, absolutely. So it was very easy to spread.
well, and here's another thing is, if you're living in a tribe, and we talked about the genealogical business of the tribes, they weren't interbred that much. So you got everybody in that little tribe that's pretty much kind of going to be very related, right?
Yeah,
And,
more or less. Yeah.
and yeah, and if you're all kind of related in some way or another with
At
very,
least my cousin, you know.
yes, yes, exactly. Well, then that means your genes are going to be the same, and if that means if you don't have any uh, resistance to that disease, it's going to get your brother, and the other brother, and then your cousin, and the next one down the line, because you all got the same genetic makeup, and none of you got any immunity. So it ain't like, well, you know, if me and Susie got together and she had it in her DNA line and I didn't have it, well, then our kids would survive or something like that. There was none of that, right?
Well, the only thing that would have been different, and it would have been that 1 out of 100, would have been if one of them French trappers had impregnated an Indian girl and her offspring, that offspring could have been the immune one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it could have had the genetics of the trapper, but not everybody would have been gotten pregnant by the trapper, you know. But you know, it was common for that to happen way back when. So, in just thinking about it, it would might have been the one that was the half breed that was immune to the cold, or you know what I mean, versus the full bleed Native American. But
Okay.
anyway,
I got one thing here. Travis the Brick.
hey Travis,
He is here and he has a question. And I'm going to give him the best answer I can. Uh, Says, where is this? Did Abraham Lincoln get smallpox then? And here's your answer. The dormant disease, Abraham Lincoln sat for this portrait. We've all seen that portrait by Alexander Gardner on November 8th, 1863, less than 2 weeks before he gave his famous Gettysburg Address, shortly after the president was diagnosed with smallpox. So there you go. Interesting stuff.
so he was diagnosed.
Yeah. How about that? President at his age. And he survived it, so, you know,
Well,
amazing.
but they said he was diagnosed, but that doesn't mean he had it. I mean, you know,
He had
well, it
said,
looks like it. Maybe I'm not trying to be a horse's patoot. You can be diagnosed with cancer and not have it, you know?
yeah, well, here it says here, I'm reading the other captions. It says, after giving the Civil War speech, Lincoln became ill with symptoms of smallpox, high fever, weakness, severe pain in the head and back. He may have been infected his valet. Um, while dedication to soldiers, Lincoln was quite ill with smallpox, long through to have been only a blah blah blah. Lincoln was full-blown case of Viola, major classical smallpox, which had a mortality rate up of 30%. Wow. So that anyway, so there you go. So he did get smallpox, probably, but he made it through apparently.
How about that?
Yeah. So right after the Gettysburg Address. So
He had a
voila.
strong constitution. I wonder if somebody tried to.
Yeah. No, I don't think they tried to kill him off that way. But you got to remember, if he's there in Gettysburg, all those people had fought on that battlefield, and there was a lot of blood and infection and disease and things like that after, because those people didn't disinfect their surgical instruments. They didn't know about things like that. I read
But not only that, but Gettysburg, by the time Jefferson, Lincoln got there, it was literally a bloody, nasty mess. It had rained. There was all the death and the flies, and you just name it. It was nasty, and there weren't enough people that lived around Gettysburg to take care of of the massacre that had taken place on both sides.
Yep.
So it was a mess.
Yeah.
We can't imagine. I mean, just tens of thousands of dead bodies laying everywhere, and possibly even still people trying to get out of the field that were wounded. I mean, it was a mess.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think people could comprehend what went on there, because you got to remember, there's cannonballs flying and lead shots, balls that were yay big, 58 calibers flying through people. And then when you got close to people, you're doing the muskets, you're one shot at a time, pow, and
stabbing each other and beating each other in the head with a.
Yeah, you beat yourself. You get your sword out, you're whacking away like this at the other guy.
Yep.
I mean, and while you're whacking away, some guy comes up and stabs you in the back. It's like,
well, and then there were times when, and there were some of the generals and some of the artillery guys that wrote about it afterwards, that they had run out of artillery shells, and they were packing whatever they could find in the cannons. And imagine, they'd stick a chain in a cannon and fire it. A chain coming at you would just mow down people in half, And I mean, we just can't comprehend it, of what the folks were going through. And they, like I was on Kennesaw Mountain, which is just north of Atlanta. And the Rebs were on the top of the hill, and they were trying to take it from them bad, boy. And they could only get about 2/3 of the way around either side. So the Rebs still had the back side of the mountain they were using to be able to resupply. But there were bodies 3 and 4 deep that the soldiers walked on to take the hill. Imagine having to walk on nothing, but they didn't touch the ground. And I've walked up Kennesaw. Did I say Kennesaw Mountain?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the one I meant. But anyway, it was a bloody mess, and the Rebs later on said, they just kept coming. They just kept coming, and we kept fighting. And the mountain is pretty steep. So they just aimed their cannons down and just kept firing down on the north that were trying to come up the hill. So it was a mess. It was a mess on both sides. But I can't even, as I walked up the hill, I tried to contemplate that on this hill was covered with bodies 2 and 3 and 4 deep, to where you couldn't even touch the ground, trying to imagine what it was like back then. And I just, it was a strange feeling, you know.
Yeah, 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 amazing. Yeah, it's amazing what this world people are. Yeah, and you got to imagine if you were there and people are, you're walking on the dead bodies knowing that, you know, well, so many people have died. Now I'm marching up the top of the hill and they're firing this cannon off. Am I just going to add to the pile?
Yep.
That's what I would be thinking. Like, this doesn't sound like a very good idea. And my captain's over there saying, charge, charge. And I'm thinking, but everybody goes up that hill, doesn't come back. They're all dead.
See, and one of the things when I was there, I was like, so why didn't they just go around?
Yeah.
Why didn't they just go around? You know, no, we got to take this hill. Why not just go around?
Yeah.
So, but
Exactly. So special
anyway,
about that hill. Yeah. Oh, well.
well, if
I
they
know.
went around the hill, they would have cut off the supply and they'd have run out of bullets at some point, and the Rebs would have had to give up.
Yep.
But but the idea that they just had, there were so many things in during the war. Well, it happened in the Vietnam War. What was it? Pork Chop Hill or something. They went in and took it over, and then they left, and they took it back, and then they went back in, they took it over, and they just, went back and forth on a couple of those hills in Vietnam, and a bunch of folks died on both sides for no particular reason except it was there. And some of the, little round top, if you, listen about the Civil War and big little round top and this one and that one and the skirmishes and the amount of people that died just to take this little hill because it was a little higher than the rest of them. And you had a good view. Not that other than that, so big deal. Later on, they had, some of those places had no real strategic value because the war moved. So it
Yes.
was only strategic for the moment.
Yes. And
And
see the beauty.
10,000 people lost their lives just to take one little old hilltop.
See, that's why I probably never joined the military, is because I would see no sense in that. Like, we're taking this hill in the middle of nowhere for what? Because it's a little taller than the rest of them. And then once we get it, we're going to abandon it, go to the next one, and then go backwards. And then, tomorrow we're going to go back and take that hill. And so what if we lose all 50? Sometimes I wonder if the powers that be that control the world just do that. Yeah, we need to get rid of people. This is a good opportunity to do that. We can, send them up that hill 15, 20 times and lose, thousands of guys. And it's no big deal. They just keep running up that hill and shoot them down. And it's fun. It's like a game.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I think about that sometimes. I think, what the heck? It's like they were talking about the Ukraine. Now, I don't want to get off of this too much, but they were just talking about Ukraine fighting against the Russians and how Ukraine pushed really hard and they gained a whole mile, but they lost a lot of guys doing that. And I'm thinking, so you gained a mile and you lost thousands of guys to take that 1 mile. And now you're
Yep.
probably weaker than ever, and you're going to lose that mile. And then you're going to have to do it all over again and lose thousands of more guys to take it back. Makes no sense. So, I mean, you'd think there's a better plan here somewhere. I don't know, but I'm sure one of these days we will face our own uh, uh, fears here and do some crazy shit because we'll be fighting our own battles. So, anyway, with that, it's all yours. Show's yours. Yes, I got your thing up. You gonna read? What do you got? I'm all done with mine.
Oh, right. You got choppy there for a minute. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I says I'm all done with my stuff. I
Okay,
got
doke.
yours. There you go. Up and ready to
All
go.
right. Let me get mine. Let me get mine up on the screen so I can change. I'm almost there. Okay.
Okay. No problem. No problem. Anyway, yeah, Scotty's going to have his own history.
Otiondo and his. I'm sorry, what?
Oh, I said, Scotty is going to, he says, history is cool. I guess I never claimed history as my history. I want beautiful ending of this life. Anyway, yeah, history is what we're living through today is history. History is history. And sometimes, I mean, right now we're living in the past history, but we're creating it, new history as we go all the time. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Every second, actually. Otiondo and his uncle. Told by Andrew Johnny John. And read to you by David Null with background noise by Duggar. Otiondo equals roots. Hyenthwas, the planter. Shagowinotha, the punisher. And Ogwias is the man-eater. Now, we've had a couple of stories with man-eater in it. And just to kind of touch your all's brain before I go on with the story, man-eater is considered to be the giant, a giant. So just to put that in your head. Okay. Otiondo and his uncle. Otiondo lived in the woods with his uncle, Hyenthwas. In front of his uncle's house was a great elm tree. The boy lay at the foot of this tree till the roots grew over and around his body, binding him firmly to the earth. Hyenthwas was very fond of his nephew. He always brought him food, everything that he liked to eat and drink: venison, squashes, dried berries. Whatever the boy wanted, the old man gave him. The first work Hyenthwas did each morning was to put corn in a stone mortar to make meal. He struck one blow with the pestle, and with that blow crushed the corn. People far and near heard the blow, and all said, Otiondo's uncle is well-to-do and strong. The old man cooked the meal, carried a plenty to his nephew, and ate his own share. Some days he went to the forest for firewood. He burned logs into pieces of such length as he could carry easily. When the fires on one log were burning well, he would light fires on other logs and go from one log to another, keeping the fires in order. When the pieces were burned off and ready, the old man carried them home. As he threw down the blocks, they made a deep, pleasant sound on the earth, and all the people in the region and to the most distant places heard the noise and said, Otiondo's uncle is well-to-do and strong. Some days the old man went out to plant beans and squashes or dig wild potatoes. One spring morning in the planting season, he went to his clearing in the woods with 2 baskets of seeds strapped to his belt. When starting, he left a plenty of food with his nephew and said, I am going to plant these seeds. The old man was in the field making holes in the ground with a stick, forked at one end and sharp at the other, dropping seeds in those holes and closing them, when all at once he heard a song that said, I am going to rise. I am going to rise. He knew it was his nephew's song, and dropping the pointed stick, he hurried home, forgetting all about the seeds. As he ran, the basket struck the trees on both sides of the narrow trail and scattered the seeds till all were lost. When Hiawatha reached the house, he saw that his nephew was on one elbow, and the tree leaned toward the earth, with the roots starting out of the ground. "Well, nephew, what is the matter?" asked the old man. "I want some water, uncle." The old man gave his nephew water, pushed the tree back to its place, and then, looking into his baskets, saw that they were empty. He spent the rest of the day on his hands and knees, picking up what seeds he could find. Another day he went out to strip bark from slippery elm tree to make strings, but before starting he gave Octiendo everything he needed. When he had stripped off a good deal of bark and was tying it in bundles, Hyacinthus heard the song again. "I am rising, I am rising." The minute he heard those words, he threw a bundle of bark on his back and ran toward home. As he hurried along, the bundle struck the trees, first on one side and then on the other side of the trail. One piece of bark slipped out at one place and another at another till there was nothing left on the old man's shoulders but the straps. "What is the matter, nephew?" asked the old man when he saw Octiondo resting on one elbow and the tree leaning to one side. "Oh, I'm thirsty, uncle." Hyacinthua brought him water, then straightened up the tree and went back to the woods. He picked up the pieces of bark on both sides of the trail till he came to the place where he had stripped them from the tree. That minute he again heard the song, "I am rising, I am rising." "Poor boy, I wonder what he wants now," said the uncle, running home a third time. When about halfway, he heard the song repeated. Then came a tremendous crash, which was heard over the whole country. All the people said, "Octiondo has come to manhood. He has gotten up." When the old man reached home, the great elm had fallen and his nephew was gone. He saw footprints far apart, long steps on the ground. That night, the young man came to his uncle's house and they had a talk. The old man said, "You have grown up. You are now a man. You can go where you please, but I don't want you to go toward the north. If you do, something evil will come upon you. You'll have bad luck." The young man hunted for some time. He was a swift runner. He never killed deer or other game in the woods. He always drove the animals home and killed them at his uncle's door. After he had hunted in the west, south, and east, he remembered his uncle's warning, and wondering what it could mean, he made up his mind to go north and find out. So one morning, when out of sight of his uncle's house, he turned to the north and ran swiftly till he came to a large opening in which there was a lake. The air was still, the lake calm and beautiful. Everything was so pleasing to look upon that the young man thought to his uncle didn't want him to see the place because it was so agreeable he would want to stay there. Around the lake was a sandy beach, and a forest came to the edge of the sand, leaving a clean space around the water. In the middle of the lake was a wooded island. Octiondo stood looking toward the island, when he heard someone call once and then a second time. Soon, a dark spot appeared on the water and grew in size. At last, a man was seen, and he was singing as his canoe moved on. When quite near, Octiondo saw that the canoe was pushed by 2 rows of geese, 1 row on each side of the canoe, while the man sang, "Now, wild geese's feet, row my canoe." When the canoe touched land, the man jumped out and said to Octiondo, "I am glad you have come. I am glad we have met here." The stranger walked along the sand a while, then turned to Octiondo and said, "You are my brother. We are of the same size." They stood back to back, measured, and found that they were of the same height. "This shows," said the stranger, "that you are my brother. Your uncle is my uncle too. Your bow and arrows are just like mine." He went to the canoe, got his bow and 2 arrows, and put them by Octiondo's bow and arrows. They were exactly alike. "These bows and arrows," said the stranger, "were made by the same man, our uncle Hyoanthus. You are a fast runner. So am I. You run with the same swiftness that I do. This proves that we are brothers." The beach where they stood jutted out into the lake, and directly opposite, on the other side of the lake, was a similar point. The stranger said, "Let us shoot our arrows together, straight across the water to the point over there, and then run along the shore and catch them." Octiondo was willing. They shot the arrows at the same instant, then ran around the lake till they reached the point where they saw the arrows coming through the air. They caught them before they came to the ground. "Let us shoot them back," said the stranger. They stood shoulder to shoulder, let the arrows fly, and then running along the shore, came to the point from which they had started and caught the arrows before they came to the ground. "We are brothers," said the stranger. "Your uncle used to tell me not to come here, just as he has told you not to. But I came and have remained ever since because the hunting is good. Now you have come. We have another uncle living near here. He gave me this canoe and these geese to row it and take it to whatever place I want to go. He has given me an island in the middle of this lake, a beautiful place full of game. I am in need of nothing. Whatever I want, I find here. You must go with me to see the island. Get into the canoe." While the canoe was on the shore, the geese were swimming around in the water. The stranger pushed the canoe to the edge of the water and sang, "Come here, my geese, come here, my geese." The geese ranged themselves on both sides of the canoe, and when the 2 men were seated, the stranger sang, "Row me home, my geese, row me home, my geese." The geese pushed the canoe in the direction of the island. The song continued. The geese went so fast that the canoe was almost lifted out of the water. When the canoe touched shore, the stranger said to the geese, "You may go and feed a while." Then he drew the canoe onto the land, took out his bow and arrows, and told his brother to come with him and see the island. Along the water there was a sandy beach next to that soft grass, and further in, thick woods. The 2 men walked along till they came to a high bank where the water was deep. Then the stranger said, This is my playground, and when anyone comes here with me, he and I try to see who has the longest breath." He took a smooth, round, white stone and threw it into the water, some distance from the shore. The water was so clear that the stone could be seen at the bottom. The stranger dived into the water but did not reach the bottom. Coming up, he clambered on shore and said to Okinando, "Now you try." The young man took off his clothes and sprang into the water. While he was trying to get to the stone, the stranger took his clothes and his bow and arrows and, running to the landing place, jumped into the canoe and called the geese. And in a minute, he was out on the water going towards the mainland at a great speed. When Okinando came out of the water and could see no one, he ran to the place where they had landed, and from there he saw, far out on the lake, a black speck that soon disappeared. Left without clothes or weapons, he walked along the shore, not knowing what to do. After a time, he heard a man groan, and it seemed to him that the sound came from the ground. He looked around and at last saw a nose sticking up through the sand. As soon as he saw the nose, a man spoke to him and said, "My nephew, I am sorry for you. You are poor and naked. Your brother, Shagwawonotha, left me here too. I will tell you what to do. On the other side of the island, you will find a soft maple tree. In that tree, near the ground, is a hole, and in the hole is my pouch with a flint and a pipe in it. Bring the pouch here as quickly as you can." The young man ran across the island, found the pouch, brought it to the old man, and said, "I have brought the pouch, my uncle. Well, nephew, go to work now and make 3 bows and 3 arrows." Octiondo whittled out with his uncle's flint knife 3 small bows and 3 arrows. When these were ready, the uncle said, "Find a basswood stick and make 3 dolls out of it." When the dolls were ready, the uncle said, "Now run around the woods of this island, and when it is midday, you will come to a large tree. Climb the tree and fasten 1 doll and a bow and arrow on a crotch, and say to the doll, 'If anyone comes to fight with you, you must kill him.' When you have done this, slip down and run around the island in every direction till the middle of the afternoon, when you will come to a second large tree. Climb the tree and fix a doll on the crotch and say to it, 'If anyone comes to fight you, you must kill him.' Come down and run around a third time in every direction till it is nearly dark, and then put the third doll on the third tree and tell it to kill any person who attacks it." The young man followed the orders given him. He put 3 dolls on 3 trees, and at dusk came back to his uncle and said, "My uncle, I have done as you told me to do." "Very well, nephew. Now bury yourself up to your nose in the sand. Your brother will come early tomorrow morning and say, 'I will see if I can find any of my brother's blood.' He is the servant of a man-eater, and his work is to entice people to this island where they can be caught and eaten." The young man buried himself in the sand with the point of his nose sticking out and waited till the next morning, when Shagnonoitha came in his canoe and said, "My geese, feed here while I see if I can find any of my brother's blood." He started off on a run. Octeondo jumped up, ran to the canoe, pushed it into the water, and sang, "Now, my geese, row me home. Now, my geese, row me home." In a minute, the canoe was shooting over the lake. When he was well out, Octeondo heard his brother shout, "Come back! Come back!" But he paid no heed to the cries. He went on, and the geese never stopped till they reached the opposite shore. When Octeondo landed, he said to the geese, "Feed here till I call you." Then he put the canoe under water so no man could see it, and went to a house nearby. In the house he saw his bow and arrows that had been taken away by his brother, and many arms, and much venison, and dried green corn. He ate all that he wanted. That night the uncle on the island listened and heard a canoe come. In the canoe was the man-eater and his 3 dogs. When they had landed, the man-eater said to the dogs, "Run around and see what you can find." The dogs found the tracks made by the young man in running over the island to put the 3 dolls on the trees, and they followed him. About midnight, they came to the first doll and began to howl and bark. The man-eater hurried to them, but before he got there, a man on the tree shot an arrow and killed the foremost dog. When the man-eater saw that one of his dogs was dead, he was furious, and drawing his bow, sent an arrow through the man on the tree. Down the man fell. The 2 remaining dogs rushed at him and tore his body apart. When that was done, the dead man was gone, and the dogs threw bits of wood out of their mouths. The man had become a doll again. The man-eater said to the 2 dogs, "There is good game on the island. Run and find it." The dogs ran around till they came between midnight and daylight to the tree on which the second doll was fixed. As they ran up, the doll became a man. They barked furiously. The man let fly an arrow and killed one of the 2 dogs. The man-eater killed the man. The man fell to the ground and was torn to pieces by the remaining dog. The flesh turned to bits of wood, which the dog threw out of his mouth. The man-eater raged more than ever and said to the 3rd dog, "Run now and find good game." The dog ran till day was coming. Then he found the 3rd doll. The doll turned to a man, and the man killed the dog. When the man-eater came and found his last dog dead, he shot the man. The man tumbled from the tree, and when he struck the ground, the man-eater saw only a small stick. "Very well," said the man-eater. "I will go home now, but I will come again tonight." He went home, and the following night he came back to the island with 3 other dogs. He set the dogs on the trail. They soon found Octeondo's brother and began to bark. The man-eater hurried up to kill the game. The man began to cry and beg, saying, "I am your servant, don't kill me. I am your servant, don't kill me." But the man-eater wouldn't believe him. He drew his bow and killed him, flung his body into the canoe, and went home. The next morning, Octeondo went to the shore of the lake, called the geese, and started for the island singing, "Row, my geese, row, my geese." When he got to the landing place, he told the geese to feed nearby, and drawing the canoe to the shore, he went to see his uncle. Well, uncle, said the young man, I have come back to see you. My nephew, the dogs seized your brother. He begged for his life, but the man eater killed him, flung his body into the canoe, and carried it home. Now I have this to tell you. You have a sister who was brought to this island. The man eater carried her to his own place. You must rescue her. You can go to his house at midday, for at that time he is never there. The young man called the geese, launched the canoe, and hurried away. The geese went so quickly that in a little while Octeondo saw the man-eater's house. At the door stood a woman watching for him. She knew her brother was coming, and she ran to the landing place carrying 2 pieces of basswood bark. You must not step on the ground, said she. If you do, the man-eater will find your tracks and kill you. Before leaving the shore, Octeondo sank his canoe out of sight and told the geese to go far away to feed. His sister put 1 piece of bark near the edge of the water for him to step on, and the other before that. When he stood on the second piece, she took up the first and put it in front, and so it went on. He stepped from 1 piece of bark to another till he came to the house. Then she hid him under her couch and made ready for the man-eater. She thought if everything were ready for him, she wouldn't have to leave her side of the house. When the man-eater came home, he sat down on his own side of the fire, and the dogs lay down near him. The woman had a large bowl full of thigh bones. The bowl was hidden behind the couch on which she sat and under which her brother was lying. After a while, the man-eater asked for water. The woman told him she had put water right there near him. He could help himself. He ate his supper and lay down on his couch. The dog sniffed something and went toward the couch where the woman sat making moccasins. The man-eater sat up on his couch and said, some kind of game has come to visit you. Your dogs are attacking me, said the woman. I must defend myself. And reaching behind her, she took a large thigh bone out of the bowl and struck the foremost dog with it. He howled, went back, and lay down. The man-eater lay down on his couch again, but soon the dogs started up a second time, came nearer the woman than before, and barked furiously. The man-eater said, there must be something near you. My dogs wouldn't lie. If you think so, you ought to have killed me long ago, said the woman, and picked up another bone and hit one of the dogs a hard blow on the snout. They went away and lay down in their places. At daylight, the man-eater rose up, called his dogs, and went off hunting. After a while, the woman saw one of the dogs coming back. Soon all 3 of them came in, and directly the man-eater appeared. The dogs barked louder than ever, and the man-eater said, there must be game here. My dogs are true. They are barking at me all the time, said the woman. You ought to have killed me long ago, not leave me here to be treated in this way. She took up another bone and gave each dog such a blow that it ran out of the house. The man-eater said, come, my dogs, we'll go hunting. And he went, this time, a long distance. The woman told Octeondo to come out from under the couch. She got pieces of basswood bark and placed them before him, one after another, till he came to the water. He raised the canoe, called the geese, and he and his sister sat in the canoe. He sang, and the geese pushed them swiftly through the water. They were far out on the lake when all at once they saw that they were going back to the shore. There was a hook in the canoe, a line was tied to it, and the man eater was pulling in the line as fast as he could. The woman took a round white stone and broke the hook, freed the canoe, and out it went into the lake again. The man eater took another hook, fastened it to a line, and threw the line out and caught the canoe. He was pulling it to shore when the woman broke the second hook. The man eater was in a terrible rage, for the second hook was his last, and he could not catch the canoe again with a line. But he was determined to destroy Octeondo and his sister, so he lay down on the beach and began to drink. He drank so fast that the water ran in a great stream towards him. He was drinking up the lake. When the canoe was straight in front of the man-eater's open mouth, Octeondo shot an arrow and pierced his stomach. The water of the lake rushed out with such force that the canoe was carried to where it had been before. They were moving on quickly and were near the island when all at once the man-eater caused the lake to freeze over. The canoe was fastened in the thick ice. The man-eater came running over the frozen lake and was near the canoe when Octeondo said, "It must be done. The ice must thaw." The ice thawed quicker than it had frozen and became so weak that when the man-eater was about to seize the canoe, he broke through the ice and sank to the bottom of the lake. Then Octeondo said, "Creatures under the water, I give this man-eater to you. Devour him." They devoured him at once. A little blood that rose to the top was all that was seen of the man-eater. The brother and sister went to the island. Octeondo left the canoe on the shore and going to his uncle, who was buried in the sand, said, "Uncle, I have come back, and my sister is with me." The uncle said, "Fill my pipe with dry bark." The young man did as he was bidden and then put the pipe in his uncle's mouth. The old man drew in smoke and let it come out through his nose, his eyes, and his ears. As he smoked, he grew strong, and soon he said, "Nephew, draw me up." Octeondo drew him out of the sand. The more the old man smoked, the stronger he grew. The smoke spread out over the lake and was beautiful. Soon he said, "Now we will go to the canoe." When the three were in the canoe, the young man said to the geese, "Go to the place where you first saw me." And then he sang, "Row me, my geese, row me, my geese." The geese swept the canoe over the lake quickly, and then Octeondo said to them, "I will free you now, but you will be seen year after year, and people will call you wild geese. And you will always fly in the same form that you had in pushing the canoe, a flock pointed in front and broad behind. The geese flew away, and Octiondo with his sister and uncle went on till they came to Hiawatha's home. Then they all lived together again. The end. Now, how
Wow.
about that for a story?
That was a story and a story and a story. Look, and you had Scotty Boy says, you got some kids that were listening. He says, I'm sitting on the front porch with three neighbor kids listening in full amazement to Hawkeye speak. How about that?
Oh, cool. Well, I hope y'all like that story. Now, as I was reading it, I have read a similar story before, and it may have come from the book that we started to with the stories, right?
Yeah, I know
Um,
there was one just recently that you read where the uncle says, "Don't go to the north," but then there was an old woman over there, and remember he had to fight the old woman for the mother. The mother
yeah.
wanted to kill him, and then he had to go get the white beaver and so forth and so on. Yeah, I
Well, there were a lot of stories that we have read that say don't go north.
yeah
And to that point, that was supposedly where the giants lived and some other stuff, you know? And so, not just in one culture, but in several, don't go north, go west, east, or south, but don't go north. So, that's an interesting commonality, you know, um, between the nations when I don't know whether or not anybody ever said, from one tribe to another, don't go north. And if you were a tribe that lived towards the north, what did you tell the people south of you? Don't go north anyway.
yep cool
Okay.
cool.
So I gave the old cards a shuffle, and the first card up for tonight, and it seems like the only one, is Crow.
We have any crow?
And I don't think we've heard from Crow in a while.
No, we have not. Been a while.
Yep, we have heard from Crow, but it's been a little while. So let me find the book and how we doing on time. Eh, that was a fairly long story considering
It was.
number 24. But I really like that story. It's like he went for his sister. He didn't even know that he had a sister. And Uncle told him, "Hey, listen, buried up to his nose, so that the giant wouldn't eat him and that the dogs wouldn't find him."
Yeah.
Crow's number 24 in the book, and it's law. Crow, are you cawing so I may know the secrets of balance within my soul? Or are you sending your sacred caw just to remind me of universal laws? There is a medicine story that tells of Crow's fascination with her own shadow. She kept looking at it, scratching and pecking at it until her shadow woke up and became alive. Then Crow's shadow ate her. Crow is dead, Crow now. Now that I read this, we have read Crow not too long ago. Dead Crow is the left-handed guardian. If you look deeply into Crow's eye, you will have found the gateway to the supernatural. Crow knows the unknowable mysteries of creation and is the keeper of all sacred law. So sacred law. Now, for those folks who are subscribed to my channel, know that I'm always talking about, to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, and the wisdom from the universe. And so that's kind of sort of sacred law. So, all of these things are available to all of us. And since Crow is the keeper of sacred law, Crow can bend the laws of the physical universe and shapeshift. This ability is rare and very unique. The Europeans that came to Turtle Island were named the boat people by Slow Turtle. Even with the knowledge of alchemy possessed by certain boat people, none had ever seen the powerful shape shifting of shamans who utilized true Crow medicine. Many boat people were frightened by what appeared to be animals coming into their camps or dwellings to discern their medicine. Crow medicine people are masters of illusion. Now, one of the things that we are always talking about is the illusion that's being brought upon us by, that right now, it's the UFOs and in Congress, and there are a lot of illusions right there. All sacred texts are under the protection of Crow. Creator's Book of Laws, or the Book of Seals, is bound in crow feathers. Crow feathers tell of spirit made flesh. Crow is also the protector of the Ogawa, or the ancient records. The sacred law belts or wampum belts, beaded by native women long before the boat people or the Europeans came to this continent, contain knowledge of the Great Spirit's laws. So human law is not the same as sacred law. More so than any other medicine, Crow sees that the physical world and even the spiritual world, as humanity interprets them, are an illusion. There are billions of worlds. There are infinitudes of creatures. Great Spirit is within it all. If an individual obeys Crow's perfect laws as given by the Creator, then at death, he or she dies a good medicine death, going on to the next incarnation with a clear memory of his or her past. Crow is an omen of change. Crow lives in the void and has no sense of time. The ancient chief tells us that Crow sees simultaneously the three fates: past, present, and future. Crow merges light and darkness, seeing both inner and outer beauty. As you learn to allow your personal integrity to be your guide, your sense of feeling alone will vanish. Your personal will can then emerge so that you will stand in your own truth. The prime path of true Crow people says to be mindful of your opinions and actions. Be willing to walk your talk, speak your truth, know your life's mission, and balance past, present, and future into the now. Shapeshift that old reality and become your future self. Allow the bending of physical laws to aid in creating the shape-shifted world of peace. They want me to repeat this. Shape-shift that old reality and become your future self. Now, that's a pretty cool statement. So to shapeshift because some folks, are in a world of crap, or at least it seems to be. And not to say that it isn't, but sometimes it's worse than we may believe is true, simply because we're in the situation. I know I look back on some things and go, that really wasn't a big issue, but I made it out to be. I wish I could do that one over again, you know. But while you're in a situation, sometimes you're overwhelmed by it. And so, crow medicine says to look at the truth and, you know, walk the talk and speak the truth.
That is so true. Speak the truth. You know, you can't tell a lie. You're speaking the truth. You know,
And
and this,
sometimes it's fearful to do it,
yeah,
you know, to stand up and speak the truth. You know, sometimes it's, you know, it can get you in trouble. So, you know, depending on how you do it and whatever, but, you know, follow the medicine, you know. So if you find it in your heart, and you know, I've always stated, and for many years, you know, it's that law of one. If you can follow the law of one, which is to do no harm, it covers so many. You don't need 10 commandments. You follow the law of one, and you know, so with the creator and with the crow, if you follow the creator's laws, that law of one, then you're going to, you know, pretty much good to go.
that's right. That's right. That is so true. You just stick by the thing and don't deviate. That's the problem. People change their minds so much all the time, and it's like this and that. They get caught up in the lies. What is the truth? You know, and half the people just don't know what truth is. And
And regardless of what the truth is, you can listen to all of these stories and stuff, but if you follow the law of one, that do no harm. It doesn't matter what anything is said. If you follow that true to heart and don't harm anyone and try to wish any harm on anyone, and you're going to be pretty much good to go. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy for you, but when it comes time for the spiritual, when St. Peter meets you at the pearly gates, as it is, he's going to go, "Wow, you scored 100, and you know you didn't harm anybody. Wow, I don't have any complaints here. I guess you're good to go."
right, right. All right. Sounds good. We got a lot of people in here come to watch us tonight. We got Scotty Boy, Mark the Art Spark, Joanne Dance Gypsy. Thank you for coming. Michelle Can Free, Witchy Moon, and Susie Coo. Boom, she says. Boom. Anyway, thanks Jojo for coming tonight. Elderberry, Chloe.
Thank you all, family.
And who else is in here? Big Justin came to visit us tonight. Big Justin. Shout out to Big Justin. He says, I'm heading north, fellas. There you go. Well, he's heading north. Somebody's got to head north. I'm already there. Crystal Shaman came to visit us tonight. Thank you for showing up. And Pearl Jones. And she says, I'm okay. Spark Arc. Let's see who else is here. And Paradox Fossils. Yeah, came tonight to visit us. Okay, well, and Max Vision. Max Vision remote viewing. Thanks for dropping in. Let's see, that's about it. Well, I hope I didn't miss anybody. I really appreciate everybody coming. Mossy Man is here. He's got to always drop in. Thank you for being here. Oh,
Salute.
yeah. Go. But anyhow, um, it's been a great night. Uh, love doing these shows. Really do. We find out so much interesting stuff. I really enjoy studying all week long. I'm listening to stories and reading books, and I get all these cool things, you know, and then we bring the Soul Tribe together to just join in and and share, and it's all good. It's all good. I appreciate having you as my friend and coming on and reading the stories and making comments, and, and put me sometimes back on the right track when I start talking too fast or mispronouncing words, which I do quite often.
And I just make some of them up.
Yeah,
If it sounds good, who's going to doubt me?
That's right. Do it and stick to it.
I dare you. Pronounce that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And I have a hard time with that myself. But anyway,
we love you all for coming and hanging out with us. We do. We appreciate your friendship and your sponsorship and your subscribership and whatever other ship you might have out there.
that's right. Well, and with that, I gotta get to bed. I'm on call and I gotta go to work tomorrow. So with that, but tomorrow night, people, is Wednesday night, and I don't have to work the next day. So we look forward to doing a show tomorrow night. And Witchy Boom says, I really look forward to Tuesday night. See, people do enjoy our show. And we're going to bring more good content as always. I will be back tomorrow night, and we're going to be going through this series, and we're going to be escaping Eden tomorrow. If you ever haven't heard of Paul Wallace, we're going to be looking at some of his work and checking that out. So that's tomorrow night. So join us then. And and with that, remember, go out, do something nice for your neighbor. Just don't always think that tapping some keywords on a computer pad or screen solves all the problems in the world. You got to get out there and actually experience life. Wave, smile, do something good. Send somebody and if you want to do computer stuff, take a picture of something really nice and send it to a friend and say, be frequency you want to receive, everyone. Love you all. See you soon. Bye, everybody.
Cheers. Be safe.